Is it on LinkedIn?
It is
Are
not
you
the
doing it
prettiest
everywhere?
looking. I cannot get the format working, so next time we do something with triple, we're gonna have to think of something other than Discord that works better. Uh, but turns out Discord and OBS are a pain in the ass. But let's see. I just want to see if we're live anywhere.
So anyway, I guess it doesn't matter, but there'll be a shot of one of us in the final video, even though I can see, well, I can't see you, Greg, but I can see.
Yeah, where's our host? Greg.
I'm here.
You are capturing your own video, though.
I see we're on
You're grayed out.
YouTube.
Me,
I'm
anyway.
grayed out.
You are to me. Your picture.
Yeah, I don't see you either, man.
Oh,
You're a great
yeah.
box with a floating head. There you are. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. So,
whoa.
Well, now
sorry,
wait a second.
it's not
You
the
got two
prettiest.
Two
Like
Gregs.
Two
And now
Gregs.
Lewis is
it's
being
two
pushed
Gregs
down.
now 'cause,
Double talk.
oh, I wasn't supposed to be in the top. Now the window moved. What a pain in the ass.
Now I'm big.
Nope.
Now I seem very big.
Hi all. This is a learning process. If anyone's watching yet, how did this whole format just change? Don't use Discord. All right. Well, we got Lewis. Boop.
We got all three of us in one to me.
No. Wow, this is really a hot mess. Luckily, we only have one watcher right now, and it's me. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the difficulties here. I'm going to exit.
I'm Lewis, and Lewis isn't Lewis.
Lots of Lewises today joining us. It's a very exciting time. How do I pop this back in here?
One is plenty.
Oh, God. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I need this to be a different layout. Grid.
Oh, you got my old.
So there I am. There's you. Now we just got to get Lewis. You think you practice?
Is the link your YouTube channel?
What about it?
Today I had the live stream primarily on YouTube.
Oh,
Greg.
yeah. It's going to be YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn. I'll send you the YouTube here in a moment. Lower. Nope. Just lower. Okay.
There we go. Some part of me.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Getting there.
All right. Names are backwards too, or is that just for me?
Square. Where's
right
the
in the real thing.
I think
All
you
right.
can
figure that?
and me or whatever the vertical panning is. He was. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Clicking stuff. Yeah, this is a learning lesson here. You shouldn't do streams in Discord. Things you learn. Colin, I'm sending you the link here so you have it. That's the link to YouTube. And we'll edit all this stuff for the final copy so no one has to see that beautiful site. Oh, look at that. My buddy Tim's messaging me. You can now see just the top of Colin's head. All right. Thank you, Tim, for that feedback. If you have anything else, keep it coming. We'll kick it off here because no one likes to watch us troubleshoot shit on the go. We have a really cool player-driven live episode today. We have a lot of interesting topics to cover, but we are also joined by a new guest. I'll first welcome my normal guest, Colan Neese from Mind Game Data. How is everything going, Colin?
Good, man. Good. How are you doing, Greg?
Can't complain. It's Thursday. It's beautiful out. And yeah, happy Yom Kippur to those who are celebrating. And Lewis, welcome to the show, Lewis Ward. Lewis has been, you may have seen his face on Player Driven before. He's going to start helping with a little more content, running some podcasts. It's going to be really cool. Lewis, you want to say hi to everyone?
Everybody, great to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me again. And yeah, this is the first time since I left IDC after about 15 years covering games in XR. So fingers crossed I'll be able to still nail it.
So let us know, what was your role at IDC? What does covering games in XR mean? Can you just give us kind of like a high level?
Sure. It was PC, console, and mobile games. So global forecasts, users, revenues, basic trends in the market. So forecasting a lot of, basic metrics around the gaming dynamic between the three major platforms I covered. And then from XR, it was enterprise and consumer. So that would cover things from games, obviously on the consumer side, up to like enterprise use cases for augmented virtual reality stuff, mixed reality headsets like Apple. Obviously Meta's like the 800-pound gorilla in that space, but Google's on the way in. And so that was also an interesting, area to cover. And so that's what I hope to keep doing. So we'll see.
Did you hear today that Apple canceled their cheaper version of their XR glasses or their VR glasses? I guess to focus on XR specifically.
No, I hadn't seen that actually. I've been busy this morning, so no. They was it the one that's coming like next year, the new cheaper version of Apple Vision Pro? No, I haven't looked it up. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I think they've bought into the actual glasses. What
Okay.
Meta's doing. I'm really curious about those Meta Ray Bans. They seem really big, but the controller they
Yeah,
say is
no, I
really
have
cool.
they
The little
sold many
clicky
millions
thing.
of those. I do have a pair of those laying around here somewhere, and I use them now and then as sunglasses because they're like progressives, so I can
Oh,
go
Huh,
nice.
outside. Yeah. So
that's
I was
awesome.
at MetaConnect last year.
All right. So we got lots to cover today. First one we're going to tackle is the elephant in the room that everyone has heard about and has argued about online is that EA has been purchased by a private investment fund out of Saudi Arabia. And that was shocking, but as Colin has mentioned on a number of his posts, and I'll let him dig into it, it's not that shocking. I think maybe just how it all went down is more the shocking part.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I feel like I've been on a bit of a speaking tour this week about it, so I'm sorry if my takes aren't as fresh for those who kind of have heard me say it before. But like, EA has been trying to sell itself for like 10 years, 5 years. I in recent memory recall that Disney was rumored to merge or buy EA. I remember seeing Amazon was leaked as the buyer of EA, and knowing Amazon, that probably irked them if that's even a moniker of truth there, and they backed away from it clearly. So like EA trying to not be EA anymore and be something else has been in the cooker for a while. As I think the most interesting thing about it was just the makeup of the people that bought EA, I think is the more interesting thing. When you look at PIF, the Saudis, when you look at Silver Lake, the private equity fund, and you look at the Kushners as the Kushners, you could kind of get see like kind of what's happening here. I mean, I'll just tackle the later one. The Kushners are involved because this gets through regulatory loopholes like very quickly if our first family is involved. So that's the checkbox there. And then you look at the other two, and I think the sad thing is just private equity is involved to probably optimize things, to put it kindly. And you know, as part of my thinking on that is like, what is private equity going to do? What's optimization? Well, I mean, if the Saudis are buying it for a lot of reasons, I would love to hear Lewis's thoughts. I think it's an IP play. I think it's for soft power and its stated goal of 2030, whatever, 2034. But ultimately, which coincides with the World Cup. I think that's an interesting tidbit. Put a pin in that. Um, they are going to want to move a lot of people to Saudi Arabia because they're building a giant city that is for gaming, and now they own a rather large publisher of gaming, and so I suspect there are going to be bodies that are going to be asked to move or moved to other parts of the world, which means looking around North America, I just think like we're going to go through probably cuts and trimming of EA at least in the short and middle term, and who better to do that than a private equity firm that's kind of stated to do that, and the Saudis get to kind of take a step back from that and then ultimately own the prize, which is EA and all its like underlying like assets and franchises and everything else like that. So I would love to kind of pass the baton off to Lewis or yourself, Greg, to get your initial thoughts on that. But do you agree with that?
Yeah, I guess when you say private equity, you're referring to the PIF or you're referring to JP Morgan Chase?
The Silver Lake, the Silver Lake component, so like the
Okay.
three-headed buyer, right?
My understanding is that it's a leveraged buyout from JP Morgan Chase is funding the 20 billion. So that's not actually private equity. But at the end of the day, they're still being taken private through a massive leveraged buyout. And so there will still be the same strings attached. So in terms of they're going to have a huge debt to pay off, whether that means spinning out some studios that they have or something else, that remains to be seen to help pay down that debt. Presumably their core IP is going to stay there, and they're going to want to, yes, as Colin said, double down on the esports friendly stuff because the Saudis are now having what is it actually called, the Olympics? There's some relationship with the Olympic Committee to do official esports Olympics moving forward from like 2027 for the next decade or something. So, all of the EA games that presumably have some kind of esports connection to it are going to be front and center, presumably moving forward. And, there's a lot of other ramifications to it. But at the end of the day, Yeah, it's I guess a sign of the times in terms of independent. Although people don't think of EA as an independent company, what I mean is not owned by a larger entity. They're one of the biggies, right? So you got Take Two and a few others here in America, but they're one of the big, still standing kind of multi-platform game developers and publishers that wasn't owned by a larger entity. And so in that sense, EA didn't have the best reputation going into this. I suppose in many people's view, it will not necessarily improve that view, but economically, at a 25% premium over the stock price, I guess I'm not shocked that they would take that deal.
No, and I was looking up the Saudi city. I'm gonna butcher this, so apologies to anyone in Saudi Arabia listening or watching this. It's a Qiddiya city, a new entertainment mega project in the southwest of Riyadh. So, it's the city of gaming, as they call it. So if you're gonna build something that is coined the city of gaming, then makes a lot of sense. You'd want gaming to be there. And so now they have between that and Scopely, obviously, and Niantic. I mean, they're kind of just shoring up the assets. And I think this is just part of a larger global trend. You're just seeing outside of North America multinationals basically scooping up North America publishers, and I think that's an interesting trend. And like, Take Two aside, it really opens up a question of like long-term competition, and how these people are going to actually compete, because either you end up with companies that are nestled in giant tech companies with a lot of money, which I think is a separate conversation that we'll probably tackle later. But like just big companies, right? You have these sovereign wealth funds. You have entities that are closely tied to the Chinese government, broadly speaking, right? And Tencent and NetEase. And so that seems to be the landscape of how gaming is kind of calcifying into. And so with Take Two, I mean, I think they're ho hum until Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out and blows the doors off. And that would be the moment if they were going to sell it to sell at the high. And so I think they wouldn't be for sale unless the offer was outrageous. But
Agreed.
everyone else, it's kind of like, I don't know, right? You just kind of see the consolidation happening.
Right.
I think, there's different ways to look at it, right? You can look at it from the business side of things where, they're getting paid a ton of money and it makes sense, and you can offload some of your assets that you have. It's interesting. Well, the other EA games, what's going to happen with that? To me, and I think to what Colin you were saying, it's very much about EA Sports, right? They want to take the model that works for Scopely and plug it into EA even more so. I think, Lewis, you mentioned EA's reputation, and I think the reputation has gotten better over time. I know a lot of people still say, no, it's still old EA, but really it has gotten better. The problem is, who knows what happens now? And my bigger concern is, it's funny, I met with a student out in New York yesterday. He watches the podcast and he's a developer. He's like, what should I do? And I didn't really know what to say. I truly think this is going to hurt the American developer gaming side of things, right? Those jobs are going to eventually go overseas. It'll be cheaper. They'll be able to have the same expertise. I mean, at a community clubhouse event a few years ago, we had someone from the Saudis as well as someone from Midwest Games, Ben Kowalo, come in. And Ben was saying how we have tons of talent over here, but we don't have money. And in Saudi Arabia, you have tons of money, but not tons of talent. But once you start buying the publishers, once you start buying the studios, all of a sudden you can say, hey, you need to come out here. If the cost of living's cheaper, I mean, if you want to go live out there, right? But it's, I don't know what you tell students. I think you still have a lot of great publishers here. They're smaller. Again, I love Midwest Games. I think they do great stuff. Acclaim just came back. And I think this is a great opportunity for those smaller publishers to come say, hey, we still want to make games here. You can still make games. Like, we have the talent here. The problem is it going to be affordable talent? And how do you tell people what your next career move is when you start seeing changes like this happen? And it's I'm not going to say it's concerning, right? It's just a change. It's how you take a look at what happens.
Well, could I jump in on at some of it because I want to call it some. So a couple of things. I mean, like I think EA and people think don't realize how big EA is. So I'm looking at our live Steam tracker at my game, and right now there are 372,000 concurrents. And it's not Steam's not everything. I want to call that out, but across 158 games, like EA has got a very deep catalog with a lot of games that players engage with. the most obvious ones being like Apex, EAFC, but then they have an incredibly long tail of just things that are sticky. So, and they're the number two publisher on Steam right now. So they're a massive company. So I don't want to kind of undersell that bit. In terms of like the core franchises, I would love to everyone's thoughts on this, but Cynic Me says they just lost the FIFA license a couple years ago. The titles have been underperforming every single year, a little bit, like not a drastic drop, but every year it's a little bit worse, a little bit worse, a little bit worse. And we also know that the Saudis are hosting the World Cup in like the 2030s. I think it's 2034. How long does that FIFA license not go back to EA and to the Saudis? I think that's I think we might see a boomerang of the FIFA license going right back to EAFC. That would be my kind of interesting bet one. Again, Cynic Colin thinks that, but it just makes sense. And I don't think the Saudis would want a competing soccer game with the FIFA license out there if now they own EA. And they're pretty close to FIFA, and FIFA, I think, likes piles of cash. Not go too deep on that, but I think they like piles of cash. So would expect the license to snap back to EA at some point.
How long are the terms of the current deal, right? Was it Konami or somebody in Japan, right? Tied them up, but for how long? Is that known?
I don't know. That's a great question. And if there's an out clause, which I think no one will know, right? Can FIFA back out with that kind of penalty clause that, and like I think people are like we're dealing with trillionaires in Saudi Arabia, and their stated goal is to make it so they're not oil dependent in the next 30 years. And so when you have trillionaires with like effectively unlimited money, whose stated goal is we need to have something here other than selling oil to the world, they're going to spend their way to make that happen. And I think this is just a piece of that puzzle, all along a whole host of other things that they're doing as a sovereign wealth. But yeah. Mm. The next franchise, I'll just tackle it. I mean, I think we all know Battlefield 6. They're, Battlefield is having a resurgent year, so I won't spend too much time on that. We'll see the results of it in a couple of weeks, so we'll put a pin in there. But I think the other like franchises that people kind of lose sight of is like, The Sims. Still a massive franchise, still very, very, very popular to this day, and that would probably be like the third like tentpole franchise that has a massive audience. I suspect more investment to go to The Sims to see if they can kind of break it out. And then and this is kind of what I'm writing about this year or this week. But then obviously have Apex, a bit of decline. Can they kind of give it more juice to kind of get back to where it was circa like 2020? Maybe we'll see. We'll call it the Star Wars franchises, EA Star Wars. You have the Jedi series as like the more current one, but I, as a Star Wars guy, bias you could see behind me, Battlefront would be awesome to see a third one come out at some point just to play around in. So I got to think that that would be in the cooker. And then you have all the dormant ones, like Mass Effect being the one that comes to everyone's mind. Like, okay, are they going to got to revisit Mass Effect at some point? I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. And I think they'll have time to experiment because they're going to be off the quarterly earnings rat race once this deal closed. And they are going to have the optionality to potentially have a longer kind of like sight to do things differently than what they're doing now. I think it's been written about, but why isn't FC a live service game? I mean, because they are on the hook of selling a bunch of units in Q3, Q4, so they can't turn that light switch off without having equal cash flow there immediately. And I think it's a big risk. But if you're private, you do have the opportunity to kind of play around with these things and see if it's a viable business long term. But I would love to hear Lewis's thoughts and you too, Greg.
You want to go, Lewis?
Yeah, I mean, FIFA's obviously, FIFA now, Football Club, as you said, has been a long time, massive franchise for EA. That was certainly a blow. It was my impression that they'd done reasonably well coming out of it, not as well as obviously the FIFA brand, but that it had been doing decently well. And it was like a huge, massive money-making machine for them for many, many years. So I actually don't know how much the in-game purchases and all the other things that were the ancillary revenue came out of that, if that has changed dramatically over the past couple of years. I'm looking particularly deeply into that particular one. But yeah, if they can get the rights back and if they can, refresh that would be a huge win, obviously, for EA. But that's very much, I think, a longer term proposition, but something that would probably very much please their new owners, because obviously Middle East and many other parts of the world are really hardcore football fans, or I guess international soccer fans, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, there's a lot of franchises that they have. Colin's right that there's a lot of different legacy IP that some have said maybe they will get to refresh some like long beloved stuff that we haven't seen for a while. I guess it's possible, but I think there will also be some additional scrutiny and really carefully looking at how much value is in that IP. Simply because it's beloved doesn't necessarily mean they're going to want to, invest huge sums of money into it. And obviously, over the past 5 years or so, more probably since 2017, since Fortnite came along, there's been a small number of massive live service games that have sucked up an increasing share of people's time, to an extent people's money. And so, if you don't have one of those massive live service franchises, I do have a little bit of concern about the returns that you might have expected in the past may not necessarily be there. And that's, partly driven by the fact that we've seen a lot of live service games come out and flop from some pretty deep pocketed folks from Sony on down. And so that's not as easy to replicate or to take back some of those customers from those, massive franchises that are out there. Counter Strike 2, run down the list. Fortnite, like I said, there are a very small number of massive franchises. I might put, football and soccer on that list of sports games, at least internationally. But it's a fairly short list. And so the question will be, or I suspect that EA and probably their new owners are going to be looking at, what can we do in terms of parlaying the IP that's working on perhaps PC or console or mobile and kind of integrate them into a holistic thing and generate more money by simply making it available worldwide on more platforms. That's a lot harder than it sounds, but I wouldn't be surprised if you Hollywood gets a bad rap, and Colin probably knows this better than I do, about going after sequel after sequel after sequel until the wheels fall off or something. The concern, I guess, or a concern you might want to raise is around EA's approach to this. Will they do the same thing by replicating their successful games on these other platforms rather than innovating, coming up with some new stuff? But obviously, we'll wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's such an interesting thing, and like Hazelight has become like EA's like spark of like new IP. Like let those creative people do different things, and they obviously had the success this year. This I can't recall the sequel to It Takes Two. Split Fiction, right? They're able to kind of do experimentation, and that seems to be kind of the kind of the indie darling, quote unquote, underneath the EA hood. But like, I think you're right. And you kind of get worried when you see these conglomerates, and like the math ends up being the same. They look around, they say, what's the opportunity cost of, I'll pick Activision making Crash Bandicoot versus taking those same people and making more COD, right? And making more COD skins and supporting Warzone. And like that's the sad thing with these conglomerates is that they ultimately pick the giant whale thing and you end up doing just one game. See, Activision, that's all they do now is one game. Sorry, Tony Hawk, but like they basically make one game. And you don't want to see EA, who also sits on just a treasure trove of IP, kind of end up in the same spot. But I am a little bit more hopeful because at least now they can see what they want, let's see what they got. And maybe something like Plants vs Zombies doesn't stay at the EA. Maybe they shift that off to Scopely, right? Like, oh, Scopely, you take over the Plants vs Zombies franchise. You're a mobile studio. You know this better than EA does historically. So you take this IP over and let EA focus on what EA needs to focus on.
What worries me is if EA is focusing, right, you give the mobile stuff to Scopely, that makes sense. They got their system down, framework down to a fine-tuned machine, right? But not necessarily for console, right? And what are they going to do? I had nothing but love for Keywords for my time that I was there, but like they're probably going to be outsourcing to companies like Keywords, who are then going to be outsourcing to another country to help, whether it be, they have good outsourcers too, right? But you're not going to start spending top a dollar for the best publisher or the best developers and the best studios, right? You're trying to make profit here. So does the quality of the game end up going down? And not to say EA didn't do that before. They killed my darling Command and Conquer, right? But well, what else is going to follow, right? And I don't know. I am not as much bullish as I am bearish on this, and I think it's actually overall will be fine for the gaming market. But I feel like I'm just taking a look at this from like the American gaming market, which I know is not a fair way to look at it, right? But like I think like EA is the company we grew up with. One of my first games playing was NHL '94, right? And I rode those waves of all those EA games. And I feel like that was the American gaming company, and now it's not. Just like that. And
Yeah.
I mean, politics aside, right? That whole thing is weird. And I don't want to touch that much more than that because that's a whole nother slippery slope where you get canceled. But it's all just shady shit going on. It's just like, all right, well,
Oh
giddy
man,
up.
what? The Kushners are on the up and up. They're there to make sure that the transfer of the EA assets goes swimmingly, and they might take a fee. I mean, that is just American business there,
I
Greg.
said
American
that in
business.
not so many words there. I don't know.
Um, no, I do think we're seeing. I would say the death of American publishing is maybe a bit strong, but maybe just the complete end game of the globalization of gaming, because gaming is already a global activity. Games are played globally. That's how they've scaled into kind of the massive beast they are relative to other forms of entertainment. Because when a game comes out, it's out globally that moment, right? So you might be playing against someone in Eastern Europe. You just don't know because the matchmaking is the matchmaking. And it's based on skill, and sure latency too. But like that is the possibility. That's kind of how gaming has got to where it's at. So it makes sense that the companies that own it are going to increasingly be spread across the world too. It's not just going to be a North America, EU centric thing. And so you're just seeing that kind of play out as well. But if you look at the more American companies, they're not publishers, but they're gaming companies. Like Roblox is probably the shining star of the thing that's growing like a rocket ship in North America right now. It's like, well, we just invented another platform for things to be on. So is America becoming the platform owners of these gaming where the games are on? It seems to be a trend that you could maybe argue that's where it's headed. But yeah, I just think that just stay in the end game of globalization of gaming, Greg.
Well, you gotta tell us about this mindshare, man. When's that Roblox experience? When's that Fortnite experience gonna be number one? And my money's on K-pop Demon Hunters, man. That's going to crush it. My kids are already screaming downstairs that they want the Rumi skin.
Yeah, I have a daughter that's the 3 going on 4 this in this month, and so we I think she hums Golden every morning. So I'm inundated with K-pop up all over the place, and I can't escape it in my life right now. So I live that. Yeah, I the UGC side, I think like Roblox this year took per our data at Mind Game, so we track behavioral signals across the internet. We quantify that into a demand share, attention share metric, and report it on it weekly. For 5 years since the start of our tool, Minecraft pretty much owned the top spot. That is, and a lot to do with its audience in China. To be honest, a big audience in China for Minecraft. That got usurped this year, this summer with Roblox. So now you're finding Roblox kind of on the rise. I am not as bullish on UEFN, but let's see what happens after all the announcements from them this week to see how that kind of trickles down. But I would say they've been on a steady decline minus OG modes launch for Fortnite. And we talked about this in a previous conversation, Greg. But like again, I stand on this. Like we should build a gold statue to Tim Sweeney. He did a lot in terms of driving value to the gaming industry holistically. So he's awesome, Hall of Fame. But he value destructed the heck out of Epic and Apple. I don't think there was any winner in that lawsuit. It was just 2 losers, one that lost audience, the other one that lost face. But the gaming industry is better off. So it was almost like a sacrificial kamikaze at Apple that opened up a lot more doors, which is great for the industry, but probably sucked for his immediate short-term interest at Epic Fortnite.
Well, I'm a big fan because of that, and go back to believer of net neutrality and all the rest of that. So I think there is I don't want to call it a crusade, but I think he and probably Gabe Newell up at Valve both believe similarly that especially on the PC side of things, that it should remain open and that view is good for developers and publishers, and that he did take it on the chin. You're right, I suppose, to go up against Apple. But he is a believer that that model should win out over time. I hope he's certainly right on that. And Greg, to your point about consolidation and whatnot, he would argue just the opposite. And I think Gabe Newell will do the same thing up at Valve. And maybe even when we talk about Roblox and so forth, I don't know the CEO there as well. But I think there are some American heavyweights that are certainly behind the idea that too much concentrated power in the hands of too many executives or deep pocketed folks that we don't know a whole lot about, private equity, whatever it may be, is not necessarily going to be in the interest of the gamers nor the businesses in the long term, because they're going to look after their own bottom lines, and not that Not that these other companies aren't, but they have a philosophy toward being open and being willing to give, revenue shares. Their revenue shares, right? If you look at Epic Games, went up from like it was like 70-30. They went to what, 88-12 and so forth. So this isn't just about making games accessible on mobile or PC or console, whatever it is. He did. I would agree that the win there is a muddy win at best there, but I don't know what else he could have expected or hoped. I just think he was pissed off at Apple saying their 1984 thing going back in the day around Microsoft, trying to say this is what how you should be doing things, and going up against big bad Microsoft as Apple, and then the irony of Apple kind of doing that to devs and pubs and other companies more recently, I think is something that really set him off in the wrong direction. But anyway, a long digression to say that I think there's some evidence that there are companies here that are interested in fostering a fairly open and fairly generous in terms of the rev share with the companies that are on those platforms relative to how models have been done in the past. And so I think that's what Tim Sweeney and some of the other veterans that I've talked about really want to do and think is good for the industry and probably America, but I don't want to speak to that for them.
I totally agree. I think he took a much more macro, less of a self-interest view when he did what he did with Apple. And I think knowing that he did a bit of sacrifice for the larger good for the industry and the health for the long term. So tip of the cap. Again, we should put a gold statue out in the Gaming Hall of Fame to Tim Sweeney.
And Epic Online Services. I think he believes in, projects that can be used by multiple companies, kind of like India consortium type things or whatever, that are going to put out this software that can be reused by many companies to help them do part of the infrastructure layer. And so EOS is a good example of Epic believing in open source kind of community driven projects. And so I think that those pieces fit together as well. But anyway.
Well, is this the time, Greg, to transition to our favorite publicly massive conglomerate in Xbox and talk about their pricing?
We're talking about money, man. It's the right time. And I'm ready for this conversation because I'm going to be the bad guy here. I am so excited. So let's talk about it. We'll talk high level, right? For those that have not heard, the price of Xbox Game Pass has gone up. It has gone up by $10 or 50% for its highest tier of Game Pass. I don't think it's called Ultimate anymore, but maybe it is.
It's still.
Yeah. And the internet flipped their shit. So
sure did.
I'll be the bad guy first. All right. I get it, man. $10 more a month. I'm not happy about doing that, but there are a few more benefits, and that's BS, right? It's fine. There's a few more benefits, right? We're still getting day one access to all the same new games. More games are hopefully going to be coming out, and we've all been complaining that more people need jobs, the industry's not paying people well, and blah, blah, blah. Is that money going to trickle down to them? My gut says no, but maybe there's a goodness out there, right? Like, you want better games, you got to pay for better labor, you got to pay your employees right? And that cost has to go somewhere, right? Someone's not going to eat it. So every price goes up. Disney's price has been going up for Disney Plus for God knows how long, Netflix. So now Microsoft says, you know what, we're going to jack our price up by another $10. And yeah, the internet lost their shit. But I mean, at the end of the day, my gut feeling is that, it's inevitable. You first of all, when you're buying into a monthly service, right, you're not going to be like, oh my God, that price went up after 3 years. Who would have ever guessed that, right? Like, yeah, I think it's completely normal, and I don't think it's out of the ordinary for someone to do this. I don't actually think it's even wrong. Is it a lot of more money for people? Yeah, it's going to hurt people's wallets a little bit, especially in this time where people don't have as much money. But you're paying for exclusives, you're paying for games, you're getting this stuff, and I think for people to flip out that much about the price hike when, again, people are complaining that the environment's not good, people are getting laid off. Again, I'm not saying this is going to solve it, but like, you want the best of both worlds without any change whatsoever. And when two forces meet, something has to move, right? And unfortunately, what moves is my credit card bill in the wrong way.
Oh man. Wow. I would love to hear Lewis's take. My take is pretty known. I think this is a throw in the towel and admitting that maybe releasing AAA super titles on Game One and Game Pass, Day One Game Pass, is value destructive, and doing this right before Call of Duty Black Ops 7 comes out is no coincidence. They have to make up that money from somewhere. It takes a lot of money to make. Putting on Game Pass makes it so it sells less on other platforms, and so they have to get their cheese, otherwise they're not going to hit the revenue targets that they need to hit to keep the lights on across Activision and all its supporting studios. So that is my broader take on that, but I would love to hear from Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you're on the right track there, right? Buying Activision Blizzard was a monster in what, 2022, whenever that closed. So they, I'm sure, are looking at what happened to Call of Duty and some of the other games since it's been added to Game Pass, and now they've got some way to reconcile the amount of time it generated, the equivalent amount of money it generated, and they've probably done some very careful modeling across all of the new Activision Blizzard and IP and maybe King IP that's available in the service. And this is a rationalization to some point in the future where that investment has paid for itself. And so I think the simplest way to look at this is, after crunching a lot of numbers, this is what it needed to be to rationalize it internally and perhaps to some other external partners, that this is where Microsoft wants to go. They've been leaning into subscriptions and leading in subscriptions since the early 2000s. So they have kind of pioneered this whole idea of subscriptions. Obviously, on the console side, Sony and later Nintendo have followed them down this path. They've been right on that. But Microsoft has also had a history of being out in front of their skis, whether it's you can't hand your disc to somebody else and let them use it and having to backtrack that, or take your area of how the DRM stuff works and from some other perspective, and don't own your games anymore through cloud stream gaming. They're usually right on the technology and where things are going, but they can sometimes get out in front of their skis and punch themselves in the face or shoot themselves in the foot, whatever metaphor you prefer, because they're not where gamers are. I would say Sony and Nintendo are more happy to let the gamer decide, and they'll be pulled along as gamers choose to do that. They will increase those avenues. Microsoft likes to be ahead of the curve, skate to the puck, if you will, but sometimes they get out too far in front of the puck and it causes them problems. So, this is a financial necessity. I can understand it from a business perspective. Gamers are never going to want to hear 50% increase. The other thing that crossed my mind is the story of, if you increase the temperature on a frog in a pot, it will just sit there until it boils to death. I don't know if that's really what's happening, but certainly, Microsoft has talked about, being like Netflix, right? And even early on, I think they used Netflix in some of their first descriptions of Game Pass Ultimate. And so I think they do view that. I was like, it's not really like a video subscription service. I think they really do think that's the future of entertainment. That will all be subscription based. You will own none of it. And so once they get you on their treadmill, it gets difficult to get off it. And so people are going to they're going to grumble, but enough of them are going to stay on the higher price tier that it's going to actually increase the amount of revenue there. Some of them will migrate down to the middle tier, which I don't think changed, maybe nothing, or at least in some markets it might have gone up a little bit. But in some ways, you want the premium offering out there to make the middle tier more more attractive. So if that one's $100,000, well, this house is only $50,000. Well, maybe I can live with that. But even though it's still kind of expensive, so there is a psychological aspect to it. And the last thing I'll say is, there's been speculation and even some comments from Microsoft for some time that they want to do a mobile version of Game Pass that will be $5 a month. It could have ads in it, things like this. I think they're still noodling in that direction. When they talk about getting to 100 million subscribers or whatever was leaked back in the, what was that, when those files were released 5+ years ago,
Yeah.
that was their goal. How are you going to do that? There's no way you're going to do it on their hardware. So they have to go PC. They have to go mobile. That implies that there's going to be like cloud stream gaming services on mobile devices. And so again, by having a $30 tier and then like a 15 and a 10, well, now the $5 one for mobile is sitting in a broader context of offerings. One will have heavy ads on the low end, for example, and they view that as their path to this portfolio of services that is going to, in the long term, hopefully turn out to be worthy Microsoft investment. So I'll stop there, but I think that's probably part of the long-term calculus as well.
Man, I want to jump in on a bunch of things, and you got my tinfoil hat on, so I'm gonna share a tinfoil theory that I have here. But I'll start with the Greg, you've heard this before, and so apologies, but I don't hate the Game Pass strategy. I hate the execution of the Game Pass strategy. It drives me crazy as an analyst because I think like if you want to be Netflix, be Netflix. You know what they don't do? Put their content on any of their platform. They point to their subscription service and say subscribe or don't watch. And yeah, you might get K-pop Demon Hunters in theaters for a weekend, but it's a stunt and it's marketing. It's not there to like actually generate revenue. And I don't think they'll ever fold on that. Like on a more macro level, you will not see Netflix content appear on Disney Plus as like a Windows outside, right?
Your games are on mobile. I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah. Or you window, and that's what every other the gaming subscription service does. They go, yeah, great, EA Plus. It's like you can play Madden after the Super Bowl for free or for the subscription. So you window into it, right? So you capture the people that are willing to pay a premium dollar for the most updated version of Madden, and eventually those more value or kind of price sensitive consumers get it at the kind of subscription tier. So I'm always like, pick a lane, Xbox. You can't run in both, but they're kind of doing this with the price hike. The whole point of the price hike was to put more of the premium content at that insanely internet gets mad at them price point. So I think they're trying to stretch that and naturally push people into those two camps, like subscribe to low tier, get the things eventually, subscribe to the upper tier, get things on day one. So I think they're moving in that direction. So I get that tip of the hat. Now the cloud gaming bit, this is where I'm going to go tinfoil hat, and I'm so sorry. It made a lot of sense to me as a strategy, and then I think AI kind of changed everything. And this is where I'm like, I don't know what Xbox is in 5 years, but that's my tinfoil hat. So let me start at the beginning. As someone who knows how the server business works, as I come from Amazon, I get it. It's basically like, oh, we need to scale Azure. What's a great way to scale Azure? Well, cloud gaming. Well, cloud gaming can run exclusively on Azure. We can use the demand for cloud gaming to kind of basically pay for the expansion of Azure. And that was kind of a pretty awesome and made a lot of sense strategy. And that was what they were marching toward until JetGPT kind of fell out of the sky, which they were investors in. And they're like, wait, what? And AI infrastructure build out has superseded any demand they'd ever need from gaming. They're like, doesn't matter anymore. We're chasing AI, and that is kind of growing Azure at a clip that is exponentially greater than we ever thought we'd get from gaming. And so they're going down this journey. And I honestly think like we're in an AI bubble. So this is the tinfoil hat part. You can argue when the bubble bursts. Is it 5 months? Is it 5 years? I don't know. But when you see Oracle taking on debt to pay ChatGPT, who is then paying NVIDIA, who's also getting an investment from NVIDIA, to then hand that money back over to NVIDIA for more chips, we're in a snake eating this tail moment in AI. Now, to date, the FANG companies who are in AI, so Amazon, Google, Alphabet, and Microsoft, have been using free cash flow to pay for everything. So they're not taking on debt to pay for things. They have not fallen that trap. But as reported by the Seattle Times this summer, part of the layoffs to this summer, the crazy 9,000 number, was in part due to needing to free up capex to kind of fund the AI expenditures. And so, at what point does gaming, which unfortunately for gaming makes no difference to their stock price at all, if Xbox ceased to exist tomorrow, Wall Street wouldn't flinch as long as they are spending on AI infrastructure, GPUs, and nuclear power plants in parts of the world to power these data centers. Like that's the things that matter to them. So I could see a point in time where they look at the gaming assets and say, this isn't working at the level we need it to. We need to kind of we need to free distractions. And so we're going to start spinning it off. And I've posted my crackpot theory on this. Tencent Activision makes sense. They have Call of Duty Mobile. Activision does Call of Duty. NetEase Blizzard relationship exists there. I can go on and on. Someone commented me privately, like, what about Netflix and Bethesda? I'm like, ooh, that is a smart, interesting. So I could see like there's a future where I could see where these things get spun off into pieces as Microsoft has to focus on what it does, which is AI build out, or the bubble bursts and they need to quickly right the ship. That would be another thing they would do, is sell out assets. So that's my crackpot theory. I will pause, but I had to share it because it kind of came up loose and I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, I mean, there has been speculation for like a decade on whether Microsoft is going to sell the Xbox brand off because it doesn't fit with a lot of the enterprise, et cetera, et cetera. I've always thought that it doesn't make sense. Not only are they like to be able to test a lot of their experimental stuff in the gaming arena, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of what people will do, what consumers will do, the behaviors they'll do. I think there's some value beyond gaming per se for Microsoft. But yeah, I guess I will the tinfoil hat theory that eventually AI could make it so obvious that it would be worthy of divorcing Xbox or the Xbox brand and the rest of Microsoft gaming stuff to a third party. I suppose it is theoretically still possible, but I'm skeptical of it. I remain skeptical that it is kind of a sexy. Somebody said that it's like, and somebody's going to probably yell at me on the internet, but it's like almost like a trophy wife for an older guy to be like this hot young thing on his arm. That gaming kind of gives Microsoft cachet and some juice that it wouldn't necessarily have as a company without it. It gives it some younger appeal, some sex appeal, whatever you want to call it. So that's what I really meant by that. And so to rid themselves of it, especially when it probably is doing reasonably well as a component of the broader industry, of the broader portfolio they have. I just don't see it, but hey,
That's
those theories will continue to abound, I'm sure.
That's actually a really interesting point, and I don't think you're wrong that having a gaming asset might be a way to drive in top tier talent in AI, etc., because they like the idea of working on gaming, and that might be just what it is at some point. It's just a recruitment engine for people to kind of quasi work on gaming, but also kind of working on the other kind of endeavors of Microsoft. But yeah, your comment made me laugh because I always think back to like this is why they kept it around because Steve Ballmer had Nokia, which is like lighting itself on fire as like the worst acquisition of all time, and then he's like, "But I got Xbox, like isn't this a darling?" So you got to
Yeah,
be cool with Xbox while the rest of it was just like letting itself on fire for their mobile efforts,
yeah,
culminating with
I really
Nokia.
like Lewis your point, and that's my theory is it goes after the kids, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, right? Like they're growing up. Eventually, they're gonna have to get a PC or a Mac, right? And Mac has been doing great for years. So how do you start getting in front of kids at an earlier age that they can grow with your brand, grow with your thing, right? I'm not gonna say it's a loss leader, but you can look at it as like, all right, well, if we can start investing in younger generations or buy our hardware now, it's basically they'll stick with us for a while. And I truly think it's a way to just keep kids playing games, right? Keep them in the environment so they can play their game on their PC, they can play it on their mobile phone, they can play it anywhere. But at the end of the day, you're picking up not a Windows device, not a Microsoft device, but a device that can run those games properly, right? And you're in the ecosystem. It's about numbers, right? It's a numbers game.
yeah. I mean,
Oh,
they just made obviously a giant content acquisition, right? So there's probably some runway they've got that's probably going to take many years to get to some sort of fruition point where it kind of justify what they did with Activision Blizzard and everything else. The only thing I'll quickly add, Colin, is that you know Nvidia was doing machine learning like 20 effing years ago before anybody knew what AI was. So when I say that gaming pushes the boundaries of what's technically possible, I mean that in multiple important senses, and that by focusing on gamers and hopefully thrilling the Xbox gamer community, I think there is, probably tens of millions of hardcore Xbox fans who will still shout down Nintendo and where Microsoft, Sony, whatever else you want out of hardcore fandom. I think that there is important things to be learning about what consumers will want to do down the line inside of gaming and well beyond, simply by understanding the gaming angle of where it's leading technology to go, by following what gamers are actually doing, that has some halo benefits for stuff outside of gaming. And so that's all I meant by that.
Oh, and I actually have to call it says I know the gaming industry is mad at Xbox for raising their prices, but like I think we should be very clear. Xbox is also heavily subsidizing the gaming industry right now, and if they were to disappear tomorrow, that would have pretty drastic ramifications, right? Like, Riot has their integration with Game Pass. I'm sure that's not free. I'm sure they're getting paid a healthy amount of money from Xbox to have that content on that platform. Same goes for a litany of indie studios like Claire Obscure, who had a wildly successful game, and congrats, but they also probably got some cash to de-risk their game by being on Game Pass day one. So there is a subsidy effect that's happening with Microsoft that, I know we want to get mad at them, but if they were to gone tomorrow, I think that is really drastic and dire consequences to the gaming industry because they are effectively subsidizing a lot of things happening right now. So I would want to be fair and call that out to them too.
All right.
Agreed.
It's time to start wrapping this up. I apologize, Lewis. I cut you off there. I'll let you guys each get one more thing in here. But I think this has been an interesting conversation and something to think about. Do you have any other thoughts, Lewis, you want to say before?
I mean, in prep of this, I just and maybe Colin knows this better than I would on the numbers, but I know that Battlefield 6 is coming. It'll be very interesting for me to see what's going on. Hardcore PC gamers seem to be all over it on Steam and elsewhere. What's really going to happen, right? Does Battlefield, this kind of resurgence, if you will, especially compared to 2042, does it really crush it in the fourth quarter and do something that it hasn't done relative to Call of Duty, Microsoft's kind of crown jewel there? I'll be keeping an eye on that. I think that's an interesting thing to watch. But that was the only other thing that I felt like saying that this fourth quarter there will be some monster games coming for sure, and it'll be interesting to see tying EA and Microsoft back together. If at least in the shooter genre on PCs and consoles, if some interesting dynamic may emerge there that's worth that we'll be talking about in early 2026 or something.
No, totally. And for me, I mean, the second part of what I'm writing this week, my piece, which is very much a September recap, but it's a theme that I've been talking about with you, Greg, for a while. I know Newzoo's written about this. I think this is the year I think the gaming industry hopefully wakes up and says, why do we only release games 5 months a year? There's 12 calendar months. We need to spread out to kind of de-risk everybody, because if you all release the games at the same time, you're going to act as a deflationary effect on each other, right? The fall of this year, I think, is going to see that a lot of games are underperforming because they're all on top of each other. They need to kind of look across 12 months and say, can we own January? Can we own December? Can we own March or even July? I think those are all open months to have more competition. Like July should not have been Donkey Kong and nothing else. Like Donkey Kong did well because it was the only thing that was out, that was new, right? So I just think we'll leave this year with that kind of that POV, and people in the industry are already talking about it. Shout out to Newzoo, did a good job on the write up on that, and something I've been on that corner for some time. So I concur completely with what they're saying.
Awesome. Colin, I appreciate you being here. You let us know where we can find you.
I'm Colan, SVP of Gaming at Screen Engine ASI and Mind Game Data. I am all over the place. I'm on Greg's podcast every other week, so shout out to the continuing efforts we have here, and it's great to have you on this one, Lewis. I'm also on LinkedIn, so look for me there. I have a newsletter called Patch Notes. I write weekly. And yeah, I think I do a good job. I try to cover things in the gaming industry from an analytical lens, leveraging data to kind of back up some of my opinions and thoughts. And sometimes I write about games that people don't really talk about all that much. So yeah, follow me there.
Great newsletter. Make sure you're following Colin's newsletter. Lewis.
Yeah. So yes, I've recently left IDC after about 15 years of covering games and XR stuff. So I am on LinkedIn. Come follow me there. Yeah, I'm happy to be on this, and I hope to be covering games again through some entity. I don't think I'm going to hang out my own shingle, but hopefully I'll be covering games and XR stuff in the near future somewhere else, wherever I land. So yeah, come hit me up on LinkedIn right now, and I will try to put out some posts on that for the time being.
And you'll see some of Lewis's content hopefully on Player Driven over the next couple of weeks. You'll get to see him interviewing some cool game designers and some other stuff coming up. So super cool. And I am Greg Posner. I am Player Driven. You can check us out, playerdriven.io. And guys, love the conversation. Thank you so much. I'll be seeing you hopefully on Battlefield 6 in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, let's do it.